Hello everyone, welcome to my second video about activity. We're going to dive a little bit further into the details and find some exceptions and some nuances to the rules we described in our first video. So I wanted to start off with this position, and I want everyone watching to just take a second, try to evaluate this position. And when you try to evaluate, it's a good idea to take stock, right? You don't want to just start calculating. You want to start by noticing different things about the position. So I'll walk you through what I see. So black is a lot more active appearingly than white. Black's controlling all these squares. So all of black's long range pieces are really good, and white's knights are in the center where they're supposed to be, controlling a lot of squares. Especially the light squares are getting a lot of action, right? So black is controlling a lot more squares, so it looks to me like black is more active, right? White's pretty active. Okay, we got to notice there's pressure on f7. But it's defended, right? It's defended by the knight on d6. Okay, cool. So what do we think the evaluation is? All right, let's check. The evaluation is plus 2.4. So huge, huge winning position for white. The position is almost lost for black. And let's figure out why on earth that is, because it looks like black is really active. So white goes e5, black moves, let's say, okay, knight f5, centralize, saying g4, g4, knight h6, d4, knight e6, h3. But let's look at h3. And then no. Let's retry, sorry. So part of the reason why it was so much worse for black was the queen is over here and there's an attack on the king. But let's put the queen a little closer to the king. It's still bad, right? Okay, d4, knight e6. Bishop takes e6, very unusual. We'll talk about this in a second. e5, knight e4. Let's stop here and take stock. And to me here, it's obvious why white is winning. And white is winning because this bishop is not doing anything, right? This bishop is not participating in a useful way. These rooks are not participating in a useful way. This bishop is not participating in a useful way. And this pawn structure is awful. So what do I mean when I say this pawn structure is awful? Black can't really go d6 and take on e5, because then they're always left with these double sets of isolated pawns. So there's not really even a pawn break, right? You can go d6, but you're not really ever threatening to take. So it's just kind of depressing. And the knight's circling into c5, and we're going to get crushed. Moves like g4. Let's play it out a little bit. Okay. It's saying to go a4. Cool. c3, just hitting the pawn, asking a question, solidifying. Bishop e5, blocking our own rooks. Knight c5. Rook a7. h3. It's saying, we could even go g4. Knight h6. h3, just defend. And then there's like no moves, knight f7 it's saying. And we can just build slowly. Queen c2, And slowly we're going to build with maybe h5, and there's going to be an attack on the king side. And all of black's pieces are controlled by this pawn structure and this bishop. The bishop is controlling the base point, and the pawn structure is blunting the bishop, the knight, and the rooks. All right, so let's go back. So our continuation was e5 here, d4 here, takes. Whoops, killed my king. So let's look at this position. And I have another exercise for you. And this exercise is, let's imagine that we can put our pieces anywhere we want, right? Where would we put the pieces? I'll give you a second. So if it's me, I'm starting with the rooks. You know, the rooks on the b file is not really helping. I'm going to immediately put both the rooks on the open f file. Very nice. This bishop is not very good. I would love this bishop to be on this diagonal, but if I put it on d5, it can be taken, right? So I want to put it on b7, but I want to make sure this bishop gets opened. So let me put the queen on a7, preparing this c5 move, and let me put the knight on this very unusual place, a6. Again, what is the knight doing on a6? It's supporting c5, and if c5 happens, all my pieces will come to life, because you know, here, for example, you know, it's clear that white is just getting obliterated. White's getting obliterated on f3, and then f2 to follow, and e5 is going to collapse. Maybe it's even better to take f3 instead. And now we have a threat on f2. So that has to be defended, and then we can take this maybe. Or we could genuinely just take this. Yeah, so you know, black is doing very, very well here. So let's verify that. Our position was this one. All right, so we have the same pawn structure. We literally just talked about how bad this pawn structure is, but now we have kind of a plan to improve it. So what's the evaluation now? All right, the evaluation is still good for white. And the reason is c5 isn't without its compromises, right? There's a bishop opposite the queen now. But if we change that and make it black to play, when c5 hits with, you know, a complete devastation on the f3 square, and black is definitely in the driver's seat here, because if this knight is to move, then this point collapses and everything starts collapsing. Okay, so the point of this exercise was to illustrate something. It was to illustrate that just because pieces look active, and I'm going to rewind to our initial position, just because pieces look active does not mean they are active. And that covers something that I have termed fake activity. Now these pieces, they look good, but the problem is they're targets for expansion. There's a bishop here. And this expansion all comes with tempo, and at the end, after the dust is settled, it's not active for black. Black is in fact incredibly passive. And that's why white is winning. So this activity is illusory. And we're going to go over a couple of warning signs that we have for fake activity. And the first warning sign is instability, right? We saw this in the demonstration. The knights were in the center. That's where they're supposed to be, but they were not stable, right? I once heard knights like stables. And it's true. Knights love stable squares where they cannot be kicked, and that was for sure not true for these knights. So 2, lack of a threat. Black wasn't really threatening anything. The pieces were good, but they weren't threatening anything, allowing white's threats to cascade. Lack of follow-up and coordination, looseness in undefended pieces, and doesn't improve the piece. And I'm going to have examples for each of these. Let's just keep that there. Excellent. So, the first game that I have, I want you to think about what you would do if you were white. And the story here is I was watching a National Master play, and white is a National Master. And they're filming a YouTube video, and they're playing against the 1700, and they start talking about this move that when I hear them talk about it, I'm like, they can't be serious. That move is obviously bad, right? If this guy's better than this, I don't understand. And they eventually played this move. And this move, like I thought, was bad. So what move were they thinking about? They were thinking about this move. You can see it's fourth, bishop e5. And their idea was, okay, they weakened the knight. I'm going to exploit it. Right? So they play bishop e5. And how do I know this is a bad move? I know this is a bad move without even calculating. Right? They were calculating bishop e7. Do I have enough pressure? Can I win this knight? Right? And the truth is, you don't even really need to calculate that. All you need to do is see if they go here, I have nothing really. Okay, it says queen a4 and queen c7. And white's doing well. White's putting the pressure on for sure. But now there's no more threats. Why is this so bad for white? Let's take some stock, right? Black has all their pieces developed, and they're gonna castle, so equal king safety really, because black can castle whenever they want. Their king is not in danger, but not equal minor piece development. So there's 4-2, and not equal control of the center. Black has more control of the center, and these things play together in addition with this move. So one, black, white, how did we get here? White moved this bishop twice, right? Sure, moving a bishop twice is not good, but if it wins a piece, it wins a piece, right? So just because he moved the bishop twice, it doesn't mean anything, right? He lost a little bit of development, sure. But if he wins a piece, then a little bit of development doesn't matter. But he doesn't win a piece in this situation, right? He moves the bishop twice, and then, we can play moves like this. And if, you have to be careful, right? You have to be careful in this position. Let's say you go knight here. And castle, knight f1, knight e4, knight g3, f5, c4. Okay, it's saying c4. Sure, but the problem is this bishop is not helping the white cause, right? Clearly the important part of the board is over here, and this bishop is liable to just be kicked. And not only is it liable to be kicked, it's actively preventing white from playing moves they want to play. White wants to play moves like knight d4, and this can run into this move, and white just loses a piece here, because if they take back, right, so their bishop's undefended, is tactically liable. They need to watch out, right? You need to watch out at all times for knight d4 moves, right? It doesn't work in this current instance, only because of knight takes d4. But just as an illustration, look at this bishop's hanging. There might be some trade, and then they win the bishop back, and they just won the d4 pawn, right? So the bishop is a couple things, right? We move the bishop twice. The bishop is a tactical liability, and the bishop is also a target. It's unstable. It's not stable on the b5 square. It's liable to be kicked. And even if they just play a6, which is not the best move, it doesn't squeeze the most out of the position, we don't want to trade. We want to go right back, right? So we gave these two moves for free. These two moves in exchange for one move. And then, you know, they can potentially continue with c4 and b5. So it violates principle number 2. There's not a good threat in follow-up. So 2 and 3. And it violates principle number 4. And that's why I know, okay, this move can't be good. And basic calculation shows that it doesn't win a piece. So it's probably not a good move. So we're going to move on to a different example and a more refined example. So here, Eric Rosen is playing against a cheater. And I think these videos where very strong players are playing against cheaters, very, very useful. And here, Eric Rosen plays in kind of a fake active way, and he gets punished very soundly for it. So let's see what happens. e4. Okay, so we have this opening. Eric gambits a pawn. An opponent starts playing very, very good moves. Okay, they're bringing the knight to d6. Eric stops knight c5 and undermines and reinforces. And here we get this position where he plays right up until this. It's holdable, right? He plays his move rook g4, trying to get some attack. Let's see what happens. All right, so the rook is hit at with the pawn, right? We're trying to exploit the rook, right? This comes back to trait number 1. Instability liable to be kicked. The rook is not stable. Black is trying to prove that. So the rook really only has one square, right? It cannot go any other squares. So the rook is forced to go here. How do we increase pressure on the rook and extract concessions from white? Knight e4. Knight e4 traps the rook. It could go here, but that's not going to end well for you. One, you're stepping into this bishop, and you're liable after like g6 and d6. You're just gonna drop this rook. So this move kind of forces takes, and now this is hit, and your rook is feeling some heat, right? Okay, bishop g4. Again, there's no threat of this move, right? Takes. Easy to establish. What do we do when there's no threat? We go forward. And this move is crushing because the rook has no g4 square, it has no h3 square. The rook is liable to die where it stands unless Eric frees up a square on g4, g5 to escape. All right, so this situation is really, really bad. And you can just win this rook immediately. A move like rook f4 threatens, takes, and the rook is nowhere to go, right? It cannot go here, it's defended. Can't go back to g3, can't go any of these places. It could go here, I guess. But yeah. So he develops, development is good, unleashes the bishop. This helps maybe support an h3 move. Eric hits the rook, encouraging rook f4, very dangerous. bishop opposite the queen. Queen takes this pawn. Rook f4 comes in, and this rook is toast. So Eric gives it away. He plays rook e1, threatening hopefully some stuff. And h3, undermining the knight. So what I wanted to take away from this is mostly this rook. Right? This rook is the focal point of the game. And when you play a move like rook g4, what you're saying is, my rook is not a target, it's an attacker. And what we observed in this game was this rook get harassed over and over and over and over again. Right? It gets harassed with h5, it gets harassed with knight e4, it gets harassed with h4, it gets harassed by the ultimate rook f4 and rook takes f3 threat. Right? It just gets harassed continuously till it dies. And that is kind of the epitome of fake activity. Right? We talked about in the first video how activity is relative, and if activity is relative, then moves that make your opponent more active and provide targets for your opponent are de facto bad because they give your opponent a target. So that's going to be a major theme of this video. I've got a few more examples that I want to share. So this was a game played by me, and my opponent, let's just go through the opening. I defend, move out of the way. I have to defend the g7 pawn, so I defend. But you know, their opponent's pieces are liable to be kicked. A lot of fake active moves. So, you know, our tempi are coming. Kick the knight, kick the queen. All right, we're preparing to kick the queen again. Same principle as the other game. And develop the rook this way. So they stop that. Okay, coming in here. Now we can snag the bishop here whenever we want. All right, and our opponent plays this move, knight g4. So already they've played a lot of, you know, kind of pseudo-active moves. Now, is this move a fake active move or a real active move? Well, let's look. Can the knight be kicked? No, not really. I mean, that didn't stop me from trying. I played knight h7, which is not really a good move. But trying to leverage this pin, right? It's not a good move because it kind of, I mean, it's fine. It's fine. He can go back, I guess, and he can take with check and then trade off all his developed pieces, and I'll be doing very well because, you know, I'll have every single one of my pieces is doing well, and all of his pieces are kind of doing badly. So it's obvious that I'm doing well. So knight h7 was not even the best way to squeeze this move. So this move isn't bad because it's unstable or liable to be kicked, right? It falls into kind of a different category. So knight's stable, but there's no coordination. There's no threat, right? If we look at what the knight's doing, the knight is hitting f7. Right? That's the main thing it's hitting. There's no way to have another piece like join in this attack on f7. It's not possible to orchestrate that. And there's no way to coordinate with this knight. So the engine wants this kind of strange plan to go bishop e6. Maybe looking at this diagonal, defending this pawn more. And let's just go down the line. Okay, it says h3. Okay, let's play h3. Rook h6. castle. Ah, no. Let's play rook h6. Rook h6. Knight g e4. Knight takes e4. D takes e4. Bishop d7. And let's castle in this position. So why is this so bad? It's bad because white is played in a pseudo-active way with their knight and their queen. And now there are moves like f6, knight here, g5, queen here, and h4. And this queen is cooked, right? So it doesn't happen immediately, right? This example is more refined. This knight is not kicked immediately, but it's not doing anything active to improve white's position. It's not coordinating. It's not going forward. And it could be liable to knight h7 type moves. And it could be liable to this expansion with f6 and g5. And it's hard to see that. But I think it becomes easier when you realize, okay, every move has a drawback, especially moves that are aggressive sometimes have more drawbacks, especially when that aggression doesn't actually force you to respond. And that's the major problem with this move, is it doesn't come with a tempo, right? It spends a tempo, but it doesn't improve white's position meaningfully, and it's just a target for the future, instead of a jumping off point for further operations. Okay, so let's look at this game. So this was this is a game where it was my student playing, and take a second, think about what you would play. Obviously, black is doing very well here. This bishop is pinned and it's hit a bunch of times. So the move that is good is this move. Just hitting the bishop one more time, and you're going to win this pawn. And the move that was played was this move with a threat of, I want to take this, and this is pinned now. And you also cannot take my bishop because this one's coming in and you're going to get smoked. So, for example, here, this and this and this are all hanging. Black's winning. Okay, so the problem, why is this a fake active move? Right, let's go back to our warning signs. Right, it's not that it doesn't have a threat. It does have a threat. It's just that the threat is easily and conveniently defended. So, white has one move. They have to get out of this pin. They would like to get out of this pin. There's only one move that gets out of both of the pins. Queen e2. And the problem is we're still not threatening this. But eventually, we're going to be threatening this move. So this move loses time. It's instability. It's liable to be kicked just through tempi, right? If I just put some moves on the board to illustrate, knight f6, castle, say like king b8 here. This is already a threat now, right? And now white is doing better. You have to move this away. And the problem is if you move this back, you actually drop e5. So the computer is saying take like this, and there's still this pin operating, and now win the exchange back like this, so you don't lose the e5 pawn. But still, white is more active in the end, right? There's moves like this come in, and white's attack is going to come first because there's more opportunities to kick the opponent pieces. So, whereas in this position, you know, should they just play knight bishop c4, it's just clearly better for black. Okay, so that example kind of covers our lack of easily defended threat. It's lack of a threat / easily defended threat. There's a convenient defense to the threat. And that brings us to one more example. And this is kind of the classic example, beginner example. So let's say we play e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop here, and bishop here, castles, knight here. A lot of beginners like this move, knight g5. And this is just a bad move. It has a threat, right? This is a classic fake active move. It has a threat, okay? There's a threat on f7. But there's a convenient defense, right? It's defended now. And a lot of beginners, they'll just pound away. They'll be like, okay, great, I'm going to take it anyway. And they don't understand why black is better. We talked about material doesn't really matter. What matters is activity. Let's take stock of the position from an activity standpoint. Black is controlling everything and everyone. I mean, black is controlling the whole board here, and white's pieces are taking a siesta, and you know they're on nap time. And that's why, even though material is equal, black's winning. Because from an activity standpoint and from a threat generation standpoint, white's not gonna be able to survive. Black's gonna open it up, and you know the bishops are gonna breathe hellfire into the position, and the activity protects the king, right? The lack of activity and black's counteracting huge amount of activity serves as a protection to this king, because there's no way to get through black's activity to get to the king. So let's look at this a little more. So, okay, this move, it has a threat, right? And it's defended. But what if we don't chop away? You know, let's guard our e4 pawn. Let's develop. Okay, what is black gonna do? Saying knight d4 is a good move. It's kind of a strange one. Let's just go h6. It's an obvious move, a very human move. Knight f3, rook e8. All right, let's take stock. So we started the position off where it was symmetrical. It could have been symmetrical with black having the tempo, right? This is exactly the same on both sides, but white has an extra move, so white is slightly better because of that. But what we got was the position is symmetrical, but black has this useful h6 move plus the extra move, right? So this forward move into white's territory is very fruitless and was kind of fake activity. So let's look at a few. We got two more examples. That'll be our final example. Yeah, and then we'll see. So this game was played by my student, and he's pretty good. Or not a student, a friend. And he's pretty good, but he's got some issues where, right, I would describe his gameplay as kind of, he likes to throw the kitchen sink at his opponent. So he tries to sacrifice all his material, attack. And the issue with playing like this is sometimes the attack is really good, but sometimes you make all these fake active moves and you lose. So let's see what happens here. So my friend is black. Okay, white is attacking him currently. White has a center. And he plays this move, bishop b4. Okay. Bishop b4, first move that we'll talk about. Bishop b4, big jump in the evaluation, and it's an inaccuracy. Why is this an inaccuracy? Well, one, this bishop is very important as a defender of all these dark squares, right? It's the only kingside defender. The other kingside defender, the knight, somehow landed all the way over here, right? So this side is not going to help defend the king. So the bishop is helping defend the king, and especially these dark squares around the king. So bishop b7, good move. You played bishop b4. The problem is there's no threat, right? You're not putting pressure on this pawn, so this pin doesn't help you. And this bishop is not stable, it's unstable. So the computer is just saying, I'm just a3, right? Take my knight and strengthen my center. Now this pawn is defended, and I don't have to guard it. It was guarded tactically through tricks. But obviously here, this move is going to hurt. But so bishop b4. Opponent doesn't play a3. Opponent plays this move, kind of respecting it a little bit too much. And we get this position, still a3, right? And here, you know, white is completely winning with d4 coming. So this bishop is a target. It's liable to be targeted by the opponent's pieces. It's kind of fake active. Okay, c5. He gambits the bishop. Very nice, that's what he should do. And he plays another move, another fake active move. Queen here. So why is this a fake active move? So we should always ask, what does our opponent want to do? Right? And what should we do to respond to it? So it's clear to me that the opponent wants to play with f4 and e5 and bring the queen here and bring the bishop here. So the opponent already wants to play moves like this, right? And when you play queen here, what are you doing? You're walking in to this move. You're saying, please play e5 with tempo this time, right? And you can't even go to any of these squares, because if you go here, your queen's just going to continue getting harassed, and you can't go to these squares because the bishop. So this is just very bad move. So our opponent wants to play this. So what we should do is play this move. Now they can't play this so easily, and our bishop is opened up. Okay. My friend plays queen f6. So f4 is not played yet. f4 is finally played. And my friend insists in his way that he's going to keep his queen super active. Oh boy, he's coming for him. But let's look. Where is this queen? Right? This queen is right opposite this bishop. This is not going to end well for the queen. So computer is saying rook f3, threatening rook h3. You could also play b5, very strong move. This knight has nowhere to go. It can't go here, no forward squares, so it has to go back. Okay, so opponent plays f5. They're a little bit too greedy, too quick to the harvest here, and the queen finds a good square. h4 is good. It's much better than h5 because h5. We're just allowing more tempos. Okay, so what does he play? He plays queen h5, walking into yet more tempi. All right, the knight comes in, the queen goes here. There's more tempi every day, in every way, a new tempo. Okay, so f6 is coming, f6 and knight h5, a way to kick this queen. Opponent doesn't see that, but obviously, you want to weaken the dark squares. This is the main target. You go here, you're just opening up defenders. Right now, this rook is able to defend, but it's saying that this is bad. It's saying we want to get rid of this attacker because now, yeah, we lose this pawn, but the fact that we lose the pawn is not relevant because this pawn is also kind of loose. It's hit twice, and we're not fake active anymore. We're real active against the center. So opponent makes a mistake and they take this pawn. Cool. They're coming in with a knight, and my friend decides to give up the queen with the threat of queen h4, and we finish off the game in classic fashion with the final fake active move, encouraging our opponent to go where they want to go and checkmating us. So, okay, how can we avoid this? So, I think there's one more example, and then we'll talk about what we can try to take away from fake activity and how we can try to use it to play better. Alright, so this is another game with another friend who's slightly better, but still kind of has the same tendencies. So he goes knight here. And this move, again, it doesn't really look, what does my opponent want to do? My opponent wants to play here, right? He's trying for knight here. Opponent stops, knight there. He reinforces the idea, knight is going to go there. Opponent stops this idea, no knight there. And he's desperately like, I'm going to put my knight here, but opponent's like, no, you got to move your knight. Get the heck out of here. And it's become clear that white is like mega in the driver's seat. Like from this operation, the bishop improved, the queen improved, and the pawn improved. And the knight ended up in the exact same place, and the rook is kind of, it's improved, but it's stuck behind the knight. So, this move was illusory. So what should we have done again? This is a harder example. So the computer is saying, yes, this is the main idea. You want to get your knight here, but you want to do it in a way that doesn't violate rule number 1 of fake activity, instability, and liable to be kicked, right? The problem with knight e5 is it runs into this f4 move, which white already wants to play. So if they like this move, knight a5, right? And this move is a lot harder to kick. It stops, bishop e3, cannot even be played. And now we have more time to glue our knight in there because, right, b4 is not a desirable move. What does b4 do? This bishop's eyes widen when a move like b4 is played. So this move is a lot more stable, knights like stables, than this move. It's also suggesting a6 with b5, b4 coming, and then followed by circling in. So let's see if there's any other interesting parts of this game. I'm not sure if there are. I see. So yeah, if I think my friend blundered here. He just took the knight, thinking that, I don't even know, thinking that he was going to win it back immediately, but he missed this defensive resource, and also this defensive resource, and also this defensive resource. He kind of missed a lot of defensive resources. So But yeah, if opponent plays poorly with the space, they play this move, queen here, and it's saying knight takes d4, bishop takes d4 here. Why is this playing badly with the space? Because there's this threat now, and you have to do something. You have to take, which is obviously a concession, giving away your bishop pair, or you have to play f5, just again obviously a concession, giving away this massive square on e5, and you have to keep it closed. Interesting. Oh, that makes sense. And now you have some time to maneuver to your square while keeping an eye. You got to watch out that knight d5 doesn't hit a little bit too hard. Okay, so what can we learn from fake activity? So the first thing that we can learn is not to overreact, right? Fake activity covers small mistakes. I'll have a future video on how we can try to prevent larger mistakes, but most of the fake activity mistakes, they're swinging the eval by 0.5 to 1 full point, maybe 1.5 full points at the worst. But most of them, right, is incremental mistakes. So don't let this idea of fake activity discourage you from playing in an active and aggressive way. Again, like we said in the first video, this should always, always, always be the default. Always. Always. So 2, this helps kind of refine your thinking, I think, a little bit. 1, it helps you look more at your opponent. You should always be looking at what your opponent wants to do, and especially aggressive moves that expand and kick you. And you don't want to give more tempi to the opponent, because activity is relative, and if I give tempi to my opponent's position is better than mine. So we don't want to do that. We want to avoid doing that, and we want to have awareness of how our opponent can grab tempos against our position and not give them more tempos to grab. And yeah, finally, right, it's not too serious. If we play, a fake active move, that's okay. But I think the final takeaway is an aggressive takeaway, where you're not going to be the only one who's going to make these fake active moves, right? Your opponent is going to make the fake active moves too. And the way that you exploit fake active moves is the same way your opponent exploits them against you. You grab tempos against them, and yeah, you gain activity against it in the long run. So watch out for your opponents to do this, and hopefully this helped you see chess in a slightly different way and helped you maybe get a tiny bit better. Thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed.